Welcome to Truth Nigeria TV's weekly news bulletin. I am Mary Kanu. Today on the Truth Report, Christian hostages escaped from a terrorist camp in Kaduna. Survivors describe nearly 2 months of beatings, hunger and forced prayers. A human rights lawyer calls out Nigeria's military, demanding immediate action to stop the killing of Christians in the Middle Belt. And in southwest Nigeria, Christians warn that plans to introduce Islamic courts threaten the country's fragile religious balance. It's a harrowing story of survival, faith and courage for Christian villagers kidnapped by Fulani militants in Kaduna State, northwest Nigeria, have escaped after spending 49 days in captivity, days filled with starvation, beatings and fear of death. They were taken on February 23rd and managed to flee during a rainstorm on April 29th. Truth Nigeria TV's Mike Oda James met with the survivors just after their dramatic escape.
The 4 survivors sat quietly in a car, waiting to be taken to the hospital. Their faces were pale, their bodies frail, but the relief was unmistakable. They had made it out alive. One of the escapees described the horror they endured in the terrorist camp. My name is Napsa Mazami, and I was among those kidnapped from Boto village in Kachia and taken to a forest near Rijana. Life in the camp was brutal. We endured constant beatings at the hands of our Fulani captors. They would blindfold us and force us to lie flat on the ground for hours. Sleep was a rare mercy. We were only allowed to rest around 3 a.m. and by 5 a.m. they would wake us again. Each day brought us fresh cruelty. The beatings never stopped. We lived in fear, with pain as our only companion. Among the 4 was Monica Adamu, the only woman held hostage. She said the captors continued to extort her family, demanding more ransom money even after they had paid.
From the moment we arrived at the camp, it was one form of harassment after another. Every day, our captors threatened to kill us, saying our families had not paid the ransom. They initially demanded 30 million naira. When the money was brought, they claimed it wasn't complete. We later found out the full amount had actually been paid, but the terrorists kept demanding more. The leader of our captors lied to the others, saying he only received 10 million and insisted we should be executed. But the night before the planned execution, heavy rain fell. Only 3 guards were left with us. They eventually fell asleep, and that was when we escaped.
The turning point came one rainy night. The guards fell asleep, and that was the moment the captives had been waiting for. Saminu Thomas recalled how they seized the chance to flee. 3 days ago, we escaped from the terrorist camp. It was raining heavily, and the guards left us unattended. That is when I realized my handcuffs could be slipped off. I quickly freed myself and then helped the other. 3 captives removed their chains and we ran. Minutes later, we saw flashlights sweeping through the forest as they searched for us. Gunshots rang out, growing louder as they drew closer. But we didn't stop. We kept running until we finally reached Maru. Back home, the families of victims live in agony. Sunday Ato, uncle of Napsa, one of the escapees, told Truth Nigeria TV what it was like waiting every day, not knowing whether his relative was alive or dead.
We talked with them, they now agreed that we should bring 10 million for them. So we carried the 10 million naira, go give them. So after giving them the 10 million naira, they say they will go and confirm. After they confirm the money, they will release our people. So the following day, we wait for them whether they will call us. They didn't call us that very day, the day that they will release our people. The following day, we now started waiting whether they will receive their call. They not call us again. We started continue contact their number. Their number not even go. So after the third day, they now call us, say we should this money is not going to release our people until we add 12 million naira again.
As the survivors were driven to receive medical care, many others remained trapped in terrorist camps, hidden deep in the regional forest of northern Nigeria, facing the same threats of torture and death.
Well, the escape of Christian hostages from a terror camp in Kaduna is just one piece of a much larger crisis. Across Nigeria, Christians continue to face brutal violence, from targeted killings to the destruction of entire communities. Despite years of bloodshed, justice remains elusive. Well, let's get more insight into the unending violence in Nigeria's north. Joining us now is international human rights lawyer Emmanuel Ogebe, who recently returned from a field mission to Nigeria, where he met with survivors and documented new cases of persecution. Hello, Emmanuel. Thank you so much for joining us. Now, what was the most powerful or disturbing testimony you heard from victims of religious violence during your recent visit to Nigeria?
Yes, I actually made 3 trips in quick succession to Nigeria. And the last one, of course, unfortunately, was after the Holy Week massacres that claimed over 250 lives in the space of about 2 weeks. And I have to say, you know, it was truly horrific meeting a mother who lost, you know, her husband, lost 2 kids, lost both her parents-in-law and her brother-in-law, and also lost her hand in that genocidal attack. In addition, her only surviving child was slashed in the tummy, you know, and so she's, you know, hoping that that child survives so that she has at least a remnant of her family left. So that was very horrific to see. But another very chilling testimony we heard was that 2 days before the massacres that occurred in Basa, the local government area of Plateau State, that the military came in and disarmed the local people of their firearms. And so, again, this points to complicity. And this is, of course, a very disturbing phenomenon if the people who are supposed to protect the citizens are actually disarming them in readiness for their killers to come and mow them down. So it was a very depressing trip, but I think these are some of the worst aspects of the evidence and testimony that we heard.
Now, based on what you saw and heard, how would you assess the current situation for persecuted Christians in Nigeria compared to previous years?
The major difference now is that, unlike the isolated incidents where we had, you know, attacks and we had this number of Christians killed, we now have a systematic, ongoing genocide non-stop. So it's not solitary incidents, but a continuous vortex of violence. And that's why Nigeria has been ranked the deadliest country in the world for Christians, with more Christians killed in Nigeria each year for 13 out of the last 14 years that the data has been tracked. So the situation is now phenomenally worse. You know, you don't have massive one-time numbers like happened with the Sharia attacks, but you have massive cumulative daily numbers. I think the average now is a Christian is killed, I think, once every 2 hours in Nigeria. And so the situation has completely worsened from what I first witnessed in April 2000. We now have a multiplicity of non-state actors like Boko Haram and the Fulani ethnic militia jihadists who are going around and slaughtering people, innocent people in their homes. So the situation is way, way, way worse than than previously seen.
Well, in your view, is the Nigerian government complicit, negligent, or simply overwhelmed when it comes to protecting Christians from targeted attacks?
The answer to that is yes. In other words, it's a combination of all factors. I will say that, the case in Bassa has always been that of Nigerian government complicity. There's no other way to slice it. You have the Rukuba cantonment right there next to Miango and all these places. And literally an orphanage that I helped, build facilities on in 2014. In 2021, the Fulanis came there and destroyed it. It is uninhabited till today. They have been operating for a week. We were getting daily reports, and yet the Nigerian military did not show up till it was destroyed. One of the victims we interviewed said that the person who, came into their home and killed their family members was dressed in military uniform. So the Nigerian military needs to clean house, because these reports have been consistent over the years.
All right, finally, what legal options, either within Nigeria or through international mechanisms, are available to Christian victims seeking justice, for these crimes?
Well, going back to the case of Sunday Jackson, which I just pointed out, we have said to people, you have a constitutional right to self-defense. It's globally recognized in every jurisdiction on the planet, in this planet. It's the right of self-preservation. Unfortunately, the case of Sunday Jackson shows that even when you exercise your right to self-defense, the Nigerian system will betray you. So we will not stop telling people they have a right to defend themselves. They have to do what they can, because the government will not protect you. Now, so that's something that can be done on a domestic level. On an international level, we are, of course, working with the U.S. Congress and the U.S. administration to redesignate Nigeria as a country of particular concern because of the continuing atrocities. I have heard for the first time that there have been security improvements in some parts of Nigeria, under the current administration. Now, there were atrocities in Benue and Plateau State, even while we were in the country, which isn't good. There was a killing, a massacre in Gombe State, which was not by the Fulanis. We've heard that there have been security improvements in Kaduna State, which I think is where the chief of Army staff or defense staff comes from. That's not good enough. There shouldn't be an isolated pocket of improvement in the state where, a security chief is from. It should be nationwide. And so the atrocities in southwestern Nigeria, southeastern Nigeria, South Nigeria should also be addressed. And let's not forget, there are atrocities in northwest Nigeria as well. So there is an urgency for the government to protect its citizens. And if Tinubu cannot do it as a southern Nigerian Muslim, then that is most unfortunate. Already his vice president was governor of northeastern Nigeria and allowed terrorism to, grow exponentially. And so, maybe not much can be expected of him, but Tinubu is supposed to be a competent operator. Why can't he, secure the country? And I don't want to end this conversation without drawing attention to the T-shirt I'm wearing, which is in honor of Deborah Emmanuel, the young lady who was lynched and burnt to death, not by terrorists, but by her classmates in a federal educational institution in Sokoto, Nigeria, I think 4 years ago. And again, that's another case of crass impunity where these people burnt her and stoned her to death and are captured on camera and said, we did it, and nothing ever happened to them. And so this is the level of impunity that places Nigeria not in the kingdom of humans, but in a jungle kingdom. And we have to strive to bring that nation into the current global civilization.
Well, all right, Emmanuel Ogebe, international human rights lawyer, thank you so much for speaking with us. Away from the north, there is growing controversy in Nigeria's southwest, where Muslim leaders are calling for the creation of Islamic courts known as Sharia courts. The Sharia courts operate separately from Nigeria's civil court system, but Christian leaders in the region say this is a step toward religious domination and could threaten the country's fragile religious balance. Our correspondent Ibere Inyama has the story.
Christians in southwestern Nigeria are pushing back against calls by Muslim groups to establish Sharia courts in the region, courts that enforce Islamic religious law. A 5-year study led by the University of Birmingham found that Christians make up over 64% of the region's population, while Muslims account for about 35%. Despite being the minority in the southwest, some Muslim organizations are demanding Islamic religious courts, a proposal that Christian leaders say would open the door to religious domination. 2 Muslim advocacy groups, concerned Yoruba Muslim scholars, and the Supreme Council for Sharia in Nigeria publicly urge political leaders to approve the creation of these courts. Veteran journalist Eze Adiuku warns that introducing Sharia courts in a religiously diverse region would fuel unrest.
Does it mean that if as a Buddhist or as a Hindus, that means we have the right to also agitate to have courts that will adjudicate based on Hinduism or Buddhism or Christianity as it were? It's a recipe for anarchy, it's a recipe for confusion, it's a recipe for crisis.
Earlier this year, Bishop Wilfred Anagbe of Makurdi Diocese told U.S. lawmakers that there's a larger agenda to Islamize Nigeria and the federal government is complicit.
The Islamic agenda to homogenize the population has been implemented over several presidencies through a strategy to reduce and eventually eliminate the Christian identity of half of the population. This strategy includes both violent and non-violent actions, such as the exclusion of Christians from positions of power and adoption of such church members, the raping of women, the killing and exploitation of Christians, the destruction of churches and farmlands of Christian farmers, followed by the occupation of such lands by the Fulani herders, and also changing the names of these villages.
And during a February sermon, Pastor Femi Emmanuel echoed a similar warning.
The only reason they have not pronounced Nigeria a Sharia nation, just one reason. They have not fully captured Southwest. And you have heard in the last few days, the Sharia fire in Southwest. Backed up from the Sultanate, an agenda is going on to Islamize this country. And it's not a hidden fact. To the outside world, Nigeria is a Muslim nation. Nigerian constitution is a Muslim constitution.
While Christian groups have firmly rejected the calls for Sharia courts, the final decision lies with lawmakers in each southwestern state.
And coming up after the break, Nigerian journalists say reporting the truth now comes with a prison sentence. We look at the fight for press freedom on World Press Freedom Day. And Nigeria's president visits troops in Katsina State, demanding a final push against insurgency. Stay with us. Thank you for staying with us. Let's recap today's top stories. Christian hostages escaped from a terrorist training camp in Kaduna State, surviving 49 days of brutality. And in the southwest, Christians raise alarm over a plan to implement Islamic courts, calling it a direct threat to religious freedom. For more in-depth reported interviews and exclusive footage from Nigeria's front lines, follow us on YouTube at Truth Nigeria TV and visit truthnigeria.com. On World Press Freedom Day, journalists in Nigeria aren't celebrating, we're surviving. The space for free and independent journalism in Africa's largest democracy is shrinking fast. Reporters who speak the truth face harassment, jail time and constant surveillance. New so-called fake news laws are being used to silence dissent. Many journalists now avoid stories on government corruption, religious extremism or military abuses. Still, some refuse to stay silent. Truth Nigeria TV, an independent outlet, continues to investigate dangerous stories often ignored by mainstream media. The team has reported on terrorist camps like Rajana, interviewed survivors of persecution, and documented Christian communities under threat. These journalists do not just cover the story, they live it. Veteran reporter Luka Biniat has been jailed twice for exposing religious violence and government wrongdoing. Prominent Nigerian journalist Kadaria Ahmed recently said, "Freedom of the press in Nigeria is not guaranteed. It is conditional on your silence." What happens in Nigeria matters far beyond its borders. When the media is silenced in one of Africa's largest democracies, the impact echoes across the continent. Well, let's talk to Luka Biniat, a veteran journalist with Truth Nigeria TV, who joins us now from Kaduna State. Hello, Luka. Thank you for joining us. Now, you have faced prison time for simply doing your job. What gives you the courage to keep going, knowing the risks?
I have been in Kaduna as a correspondent for the Vanguard newspaper since 2011, before I put in my resignation in 2017. This is a result of the treatment which I got from the newspaper. It didn't stand by me when I was in several trouble with Kaduna State government under Nasiru El-Rufai. I was first arrested in 2016. I gained bail almost immediately. It has to do with a report that I did of the killings in southern Kaduna. And then I also got arrested again in 2017, where I was clamped in jail for over 3 months on the same report as a result of what I have come to also confirm as the genocide carried out against the ethnic nationalities in the southern part of Kaduna State. I was in jail for over 3 months before I got bail. The case is still on.
Now, how would you describe the current environment for press freedom in Nigeria, and how does that affect journalists trying to report on attacks against faith communities?
Okay, Mary, actually reporting faith-based conflict or violence in Nigeria, it's a very dicey matter. Apart from Boko Haram and ISWAP, who have already gained notoriety as global terror groups, the ones that are making most of the headlines now are the Fulani armed groups that you have to be very careful to choose the words you use. As Christians, as a Christian reporter, you are safe to say bandits, or you say unknown gunmen, or you say armed men. But we that are on the field clearly know, based on what the victims, survivors, tell us, that these are Fulani armed groups carrying out activities that are clearly ethnic cleansing and terrorism. You have to be careful how you call them. If you say it is genocide or it is pogrom, you are cutting yourself problems. But we know that that is it. So it has to take a lot of courage for you to report it properly. What the federal government of Nigeria is at bed with is to use the word herders-farmers clash, or you use the word herder-farmers conflict, not the true actions that are carried out, which is genocide and terrorism.
Well, Luca Biniat, thank you for your reporting and your courage. And Nigeria's president is drawing a hard line. On a visit to the conflict-ridden north, President Bola Tinubu delivered his sharpest warning yet to armed groups behind years of deadly violence. Speaking to frontline soldiers in Katsina State, Tinubu vowed to crush insurgents with superior firepower, better pay and full federal backing, calling it a fight for the very soul of Nigeria. President Bola Tinubu's visit to Katsina may have been scheduled for economic projects, but security quickly took center stage. The president stood before Nigerian troops in Katsina not as a politician, but as commander-in-chief.
The fight you are waging here in Katsina and all over the country, it's not just a battle for territory. It is a battle for the soul of Nigeria.
The president's words were more than ceremonial. With mounting pressure over rising terror attacks, Tinubu called the soldiers Nigeria's shield, guardians of democracy whose sacrifices inspire a nation.
You are the shield of Nigeria, the brave sons and daughters who stand between our people and the forces of terror. Every inch of ground you hold, every terrorist you neutralize, and every community you secure is a victory for justice, freedom, and the future of our children.
While soldiers cheered the president, morale has been strained for years by outdated equipment and poor living conditions.
We are taking bold steps to equip you with advanced equipment, necessary technological advancement, superior intelligence, and robust logistical support, not only to defend this nation, but to dominate and defeat every adversary. But it's not just about weapons. Your welfare, your care is a top priority for this nation. We are committed to ensuring your families are safe, your allowances are paid promptly, your health care is guaranteed, and your dignity upheld.
Katsina State Governor Diko Rada thanked the president for standing with the region where foreign-backed militants continue to terrorize communities, forcing mass displacement.
When we assumed office in 2023, sir, we faced unprecedented insecurity in the state. Our efforts were dedicated to allocating scarce resources in fighting it. We established Katsina State Community Watch Corps. To great debate, we are grateful that it has succeeded in integrating with the national security outfit to reduce the insecurity across the state significantly.
President Tinubu's trip to Katsina was his first official visit to the state, but more critically, it was a test of leadership in the face of unrelenting violence. Whether this renewed push for security leads to lasting peace remains to be seen. Well, that's all for now on The Truth Report. For full stories and exclusive updates, follow us on YouTube at Truth Nigeria TV and visit our website, truthnigeria.com. I'm Mary Kadu. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.